Lorries would rock up on the road, block the road, people were bibbing their horns. And it's like,
Oh my
you
goodness.
just got to unload like a pallet full of like stuff.
Welcome to Stories from Site, the renovation podcast that digs a little deeper. I'm Amy Dornalic, and together with my co-host Jane Middlehurst, we peek behind the curtains of those Insta-worthy interiors to bring you the real processes people went through to make their dream homes a reality. After 10 years as architects renovating homes, Jane and I set up HomeNotes to teach people how to take on their own renovation journeys. We've met so many inspiring people on the way, and now we want to share their incredible stories. We recently caught up with Nick and Dawn, past clients of ours, and reflected back on the project we did together. With some experience in construction project management, they took on the role of being the main contractor and employed separate trades to help them complete the works, all while juggling full-time jobs and having a baby. We talked to them about the challenges, the joys of courtyards, and the emotions of settling into your finished project. And now, with their next move in mind, we also find out what they would do differently next time. Hi both, welcome to the podcast. It's been quite a few years since we worked together, so can you take us back to the beginning of the project? I know it began with you purchasing your house, so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, when we first saw the house, we saw it only once before we put an offer into it, almost. When we walked in, we just got this great feel about it. This beautiful big house with really high ceilings and the space and the light. I mean, it wasn't in great condition in all areas, but you could just see and feel the potential of it. It's not just about what it looks like.
I think it had good bones.
We always look for good bones. I think the most important thing to us, or to me anyway, was light. I wanted something that was bright and light and great to live in. And so we started then thinking about how we would go about it, thinking about it, architects, and obviously got in touch with you and just started to sort of imagine all the possibilities of what the house could look like. And I mean, I know, Nick, you sort of said there's only a sort of certain number of things that you can do with a house like that. But I feel like just going through that process with you was fantastic, understanding like the different ways we could do something. And I think you gave us little pushes in certain directions. So there was one particular piece which was around the courtyard, the little inner courtyard that we got. And at the time when you proposed it, I was just like, I don't understand why we would do this. This is very unusual. Why would you have one? And you really kind of like pushed and nudged and said, you really need to think about this. You need to think about breaking up the space, because this was new for me. I didn't know. I just like more space is better. And you said, no, you're going to need to think about when you have kids, obviously not something we thought about. You're going to want to be able to sometimes shut things off, but you also want to break the space up so it feels like you've got different areas. And I always look back on that courtyard. That courtyard is one of the biggest joys I get from the house because of the light that it brings in, because of the green wall that we've got there, which I just sort of love to potter around and sort out.
When we thought about the house, we had this vision for it, and it was definitely, you challenged us with that. And, I think real estate agents talk about the square footage, the more square footage, the more money you get for it. And the courtyard takes away from that. But actually what it does, it adds so much more to the house than like, I don't know, whatever that is, 9 square meters, not even that, 4 square meters or whatever it is. It just adds so much more to the space. It is the feature of the house, I think, because you can see through different ways. It brings so much light into the house. It is quite amazing design feature. And it's something we wouldn't have done and without your help. So, yeah.
Well, it brings us on nicely talking about the process and how much help you had from us, because the project wasn't a full architectural service, was it? Partway through the project, we were talking about who was going to manage this on site. I was going to have a baby, and so I wasn't available to be there on site. And then you, Nick, have experience with built projects through your work, don't you?
Yeah.
And you can remind me if this is correct, but I think we had the conversation and you were saying actually that would be preferable for you guys, that you managed the works on site.
That's exactly right. So, yeah, I have a bit of experience through work of managing construction projects, and Dawn and I've always talked about like having the opportunity to build our own place. This was that opportunity. There's so much potential with it. We really liked the vision, and it's like, okay, well, let's try it. If you looking back at it was at a time where Dawn was pregnant, had a baby, We just bought a new house. It was quite a big commitment, like in terms of costs. Like it was pushing us a little bit, and I think we underestimated the cost of the build as well. Like everyone does. And also, I started a new job, so like it's those three factors all within the space, all in the same few months, really. But we definitely learned a lot. Yeah, I think the idea of like construction managing it is a big consideration for people, and there's so much risk in these type of projects. Like who's best to help manage and mitigate those risks? And you got the spectrum of, at one end you've got like a main contractor you can allocate most of the risks to for them to manage, or you've got the self build and you do it all yourself. And there's pros and cons with that, and there's obviously different versions out in the middle. And I think we were somewhere in that middle, more down to the self build piece, because I was quite hands on in certain things, but there was elements we definitely needed specialist contractors, obviously for like plumbing and electric and gas and all of those things. But structure was the main one. When we had to do the rear extension, there was a bit of underpinning, and it's like, well, actually, I'm going to package that up, give it to a contractor to manage that risk, because I don't want the neighbour's house falling down because it was on the party wall. We had to underpin. There was all these different complexities. I was like, okay, well, they've got insurance, they've done it before. I'm going to get them to do it and package it up. And then the rest of it was just like finding contractors that we kind of connected with more than like their flashy brochures and all their marketing stuff. It's like, can I actually rely on you, one, to turn up, and two, are we going to be able to have a working relationship together? And that was the most important thing for me.
Can I ask you, did you spend a lot of time before you started on site planning it out, or did you kind of do one bit and then wait, do your research, do that bit? And
no, like we had a phasing plan, like the sequence of the activities. And we had that as a rough kind of guide of like the direction we were going. So like the map, but on the way, obviously things change, unexpected things come up, and you just have to react to it. One of the biggest challenges that we had on this particular project was it's quite a constrained site. When you've got a terrace house in a terrace road, like where do you store stuff? Like where do you store materials? So it's like just in time process of like you order something and it's got to be there when you need it. And if it's not there when you need it, there's delays, and then it has a knock-on effect down the chain. And I think that was the most stressful thing about this whole project was the logistics, getting materials to site when they're needed. And also the flip side of it is like, I don't know, you buy some plasterboard or something and you have to buy more than you need. So you're spending more money because there's wastage. And then you have to pay for someone to take that wastage or that waste. So you're paying twice. And then where do you store that waste? The amount of money we spent on skips and waste removal, we did not plan for that. And I think that was one of the biggest learnings, is like just the logistics around it. Like, and lorries would rock up on the road, block the road, people were bibbing their horns. And it's like, you just got to unload like a pallet full of like stuff. And it's like, I think that's the stress. And your neighbours are getting agitated because of it. And sometimes they rock up at 7 o'clock in the morning, wake the whole street up. It's all that kind of stuff. Oh dear, it was reliving the moments here.
That's the life of a main contractor, isn't it? Because essentially that's the job that you were doing, was main contractor. You were subcontracting all the different people. And I guess when people sometimes are like, why have I got this main contractor when really we're just talking to the tiler or the plumber? I guess it's that thing that you've just described, which is the job, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah.
Can I ask you, what was the kind of most unexpected thing that happened during site, or that you learned?
I mean, we talked about there's unexpected kind of good. So there's the courtyard. That was unexpected and good and great. I think some of the things that I didn't expect was we had different contractors for the kitchen, like the core kitchen, and different contractors for the worktops. And that was just because I'd gone around like trying to find the best deal for various sort of bits and pieces. And what I didn't expect is how much work it would take to get them to work together. Nick actually had to step in to kind of like calm things down, because the situation became so stressful. I was just like, but you're all working in the same area. Like, how would you not like know how to work together? And that was a real learning for me, is that Sometimes, I guess, buying everything from one place will be actually quite simpler. So I think that was one thing for me. What about you, Nick?
Yeah. I think that for me, the tiling was
Oh,
like
yeah.
just how complex tiling is. That is just a minefield. We had to sack our first tiler because it was shocking, and the cost of wastage, it was just unbelievable. And then the second tiler just was very particular. He was very good quality, but unless it was perfect, like the walls, they had to be like within a tolerance of 1 mil plumb, like
Whoa.
he wouldn't do it. He would be like, no, it's not good enough. It's going to impact the finish. It's so the preparation work that went in to make the walls square and plumb was unbelievable. And I think that just took so much time and effort. And then obviously that has a knock-on effect to everything else because I had to keep getting come back, and get the others to do that work. Yeah, I think that was probably the biggest surprise.
One more thing I thought of is that when we were ordering all the bits and pieces for things in the house, whether it was for the bathrooms or for the kitchen, a lot of the things we ordered in advance as well to make sure that it was there and ready. But I never opened the boxes to look at them because you just assumed that I've got a sink. Great, cool. I will just stick it over here. But a learning for me was you got to open the box, you got to check that the sink is actually okay, because there were a number of occasions where they'd arrived broken, but because I'd never opened it because I just assumed it was going to be okay, that caused a problem down the track. It's like sometimes the little things that you just got to keep an eye on.
How did you find working as a team? And obviously in this quite pressurized situation, it's putting a lot of strain on you guys, right? And it sounds like you both had split up your tasks and you were both working hard to pull it together.
It was hard. It was really hard. And I felt there were many things that I'd never done before, which is why conversations with you, Jane, were so helpful, because I hadn't thought about laying out tiles in a bathroom before and all the different bits and pieces. Like the fact that you had a list of things, go and buy these things. It's just thank goodness you
really
did.
helpful.
Because otherwise,
Yeah.
it would have just been chaos. I would never have known what to have bought. But I think, because it was also the first time that we were both doing this in earnest, there were definitely moments of tension, serious tension, because I'd be obsessing over tiles. Nick would be trying to obsess over how's the house coming together. We just got different perspectives on things. But, we made it through.
Yeah. You hear it all the time, but the money thing is quite stressful, and just the cash flow around there. And, when big bills come in and you just realize how much more you've still got to do. I think that was a real tension throughout, because we were trying to do so much on such a tight budget. And, the scope grows a little bit and we did a little bit things extra. And I think that was some of the hardest things, was making those decisions around spending the money now, because we got this idea that it's going to be great, but the pressure of that.
Can I ask you, did you have a strategy for managing that side of it, the budget side?
Yeah, so we had a very long spreadsheet. So every bill that came in, we jotted down how much it was, and then there was a tally at the top. This is our budget. This is our running total, and this is how much we've got left. And we try and forecast some of the bigger spends. It was easy to do with the windows, for example. That was a huge purchase, really quite scary one as well, because there's so much glass in the back. And just the fear around they come to site and it's the wrong size or something. That was definitely some sleepless nights there. So we tried to forecast these bigger spends, but I think the hardest things were all these little bits that just added up quite quickly. You spend 500 quid here, 500 quid there, and you only do that a few times. And before you know, you've got a few £1,000s that you haven't accounted for. And that just happened pretty much every week. And then after a few months, you just suddenly spent 20 or 30,000 on these little stuff that you can't really plan for. So that was just a spreadsheet. That was kind of how we did it. And you had to be quite on it to keep updating it, because sometimes you get a whole dozen of invoices come in and you just got to remember to put it in the spreadsheet, because before you know it, you're all out of whack with what you're spending.
Were you guys living on site at the same time?
No, we had a flat just down the road, so it was actually quite easy for us to get to site if we needed it, and that was that was actually quite fortunate. But about 6 to 8 months into the build, we did need to move in just because there were like cost pressures and we couldn't afford to be living in the flat while also trying to pay for all of this. So we did end up living in a building site, I think, for quite a few months. I might even say years. I think it was a good chunk of time where we couldn't afford to go and buy the shutters, so we just had this period of time like where they're just like there's these sort of bits of plastic waving in the windows. But once it was in, it looked amazing. But it was almost like, what can we deal without for now?
And where did your daughter arrive in all of this?
So we started in January and she arrived in April. So we moved in, I think it was like November?
September,
was it? Yeah, so she was
October.
like 4 or 5 months old. I think we talked about that a lot, like moving into a building site with a young baby in the dust, because the dust just gets everywhere.
Yeah.
And we tried to manage that as much as possible. I don't think we could have finished it if we hadn't done it, because just the cost of spending in the two places was just, something was going to fall over. So we had to make that call, that trade-off. Yeah.
Obviously, when you've moved into a project and it's not finished, you don't really get that clear finish point. Was there a moment where you both sat down and you thought, yeah, we've done it. Like, here we are, we've finished?
I think that's different for both of us. For me, I still see all the problems and I remember the problems and compromises we had to make. There are moments where I sit in there and I go, well, this is amazing, especially on a nice sunny day and the amount of light. But just being in the house, I see all the problems. I wish I did this, or wish I'd done that. Yeah, but I think for you, Dawn, it might have been slightly different. So,
So we had the shed, which you helped us with, when that was done. And then the green roof went in on top of the house. Then I knew we were done. I was like, we don't need to do anything else. It's all complete. And I felt like that was the point for me. Yeah. And I remember just sort of looking out over the green roof, which is spectacular, by the way, especially at this time of the year, because you're watching like all the little bees and the birds come down and sit on the roof and like they kind of pick through whatever is there. And I just sort of thought to myself, well, this house is absolutely amazing. Like it's just perfect. I know, Nick, you feel differently, but to me, like I was just like, this is it. We are done. It's in a really good place. Yeah.
Do you feel like those two different reactions are because of how you were involved with the things that happened, or is it personality based? Because I have things in our renovation which took me a long time to get over. The fact that it wasn't quite as I had hoped it would be or imagined. And it does go down with time. But I think for me, I've thought maybe that's a bit of a personality thing. What do you feel?
I think I'm at a place now where I look back and like there are things that niggle me now, but I couldn't have done anything different back then, and so I'm kind of accepting of that. I still think about them and that annoys me, but it's not like I could wish that I could like regrets of going back to change anything, because I couldn't have, it might have been financial, it might have been time issues, whatever it might have been at that time. It's just that we couldn't have done it. Maybe in the future could think about that and learn for the next time. But at the moment, in the time, it's just like, well, we've done the best that we can do. And I'm okay with that.
I think part of your job as well, like your actual job, is to look at building defects, right? But it's something I think you've just built into you as well. So when you're walking around, you just still see building defects. I think for me, like there are definitely things that if I was to do it again, I wouldn't do. But that's more for next time than it is for right now.
So can I ask you, in terms of budget, how much do you think you saved going down this route, and did you stay on budget?
Staying on budget's a hard question because the scope grew a little bit. We saved significant amount of money. I think we went out to some main contractors at the beginning just to kind of like test the market, and the scope of works was quite significant. We had this rear extension, reconfiguration of the internal space and the loft conversion. And when we went out to the market, we just went with the internal reconfiguration on the first and ground floor and the rear extension. And I think we got like quotes back at like 500,000. And we were like, we haven't got that kind of money, so maybe we can't even make this happen. It was about half that to do the whole thing, including the loft extension, which, and that's with like a huge chunk of the cost was on the windows. Like that was probably a fifth of the budget just on windows. But yeah, like it's significant savings. Yeah.
How long did it take, would you say, from start to finish?
I think if we exclude the garden and the landscaping works, I think it probably took about 14 months, 12 to 14 months, something like that. Yeah. Because we started in January of 2017. We moved in September. We went away for Christmas. And when we came back, kitchen was pretty much done. And then I think it was just like a few bits and pieces after that. We just need to finish off. And then it was kind of pretty much all done.
Can I just say that, we're not talking about a kind of bog standard project. I mean, people will see if they look at the photos, but it's an absolutely beautiful job. Like the technical detail that has gone into the build. And when I came to see it afterwards, I was truly amazed. Yeah, it's a truly lovely space to be in,
Amazing. Well, thanks, Jane, for that. Yeah, for me, I think what we built is very true to the original design, and I think we talked about this, that sometimes things change because of costs and stuff, but I think we were so bought into the design that you did. We wanted it to be like a true reflection of that. And without those, I used to spend hours every night just looking at them, trying to understand what you'd drawn so I could figure out like how that actually translates from this two-dimensional line drawing to like this space, so that we're like this physical thing and with all these different things connecting and all these different parts. And I'd be like sitting there and I'd be drawing, like sketching things on another notepad to try and figure out like what does that actually mean, like where, like, and what is that dimension, like what is that, and like I just spend hours pretty much most nights just looking at the drawing. So
it's quite a scary experience as an architect, because I think when you're designing something like that was, it has some technical detailing in there. When you know that you're going to be there on site, it's kind of like you're still overseeing your design and picking up on things, and you're there to add the extra drawing or extra explanation if it's needed. And it was quite scary for us just handing it over and just like, oh, we hope we covered everything. But you did amazingly well to interpret all our drawings like that without us to add any extra explanation, which is what we would usually be doing.
Yeah. And I think on that, I would say if someone's doing this, that's what they need to understand, the drawings, because that is the key to it, to actually think about it, really interrogate them and try and understand what do these lines actually mean in real world, and I think that would be the biggest tip, because like if you give it to a main contractor, they kind of look at it and kind of understand it like you do, like you have this knowledge about what you've drawn and how that actually ends up being into something real. And I think that's what a main contractor can do. They look at it and go, interpret it and go, oh, I understand how that is. But for me, it's like I actually had to understand it at a deeper level. So then I could figure out that if there was an issue on site and these two things didn't work, like how are we going to resolve that based on this drawing that I've got?
Can I ask you, do you feel that the effort and energy and work that you both put into the project, do you feel like that has added to your enjoyment of the space?
I mean, for me, absolutely. I think I often think about the house is like made by us for us. And that's an incredible feeling, right? Just knowing that everything in here was, created, thought through, designed by us. Well, literally like this group of people. I think it's just wonderful. It like adds so much more enjoyment to it.
And now that you're looking forward and looking towards your next project, what are the things that you're going to take from this going forward?
Budget more for skips and waste removal. No.
It sounds boring, but it's so key, isn't it? But you're up for the challenge again.
I think it's been enough time that's passed for me I am. I think I said at one point, didn't I, Dawn, that we're never doing this again.
Oh, yeah, but I know you. We were always going to do it again. There's just no way that we would ever just move into a normal house and just exist there. It's you have the bug. It's definitely like I think a part of you. I think the vision part really matters as well. I think it's quite funny. We shared some of the photos with one of our friends, and she's just looking through it, and she was like, "Is this what you're buying?" And I'm like, "Yep, it is." And she's like, "Okay, and are we keeping all of this?" And I'm like, "Yep, we are." And she couldn't see it, and I get that, right? I would totally get it, but you've got to be able to go in there and just like reimagine what it could look like, even with liquor paint, and be able to see that the bones are there. But I think in terms of your question around what we would do next, I think for me, the value of a good architect to work with you, someone who can listen to what you're saying and what you want, but also challenging you on whether that will really work. I mean, I've talked to Nick about this. I think it's incredible to have that because, like I said, with the courtyard, I just didn't understand it when it was suggested, but it is hugely valuable. So I think just somebody who can think about those things, challenge you, and explore different ideas is just really, really important.
Would you do the main contractor role again? I'm interested to know.
I don't know. My role is very different now, and I don't know if I've got enough time. I don't know. I think there's elements, like maybe it's like packaging up in slightly larger packages of work that make it attractive. But then the other side of it is like whether the market's even interested in that. It's quite competitive out there, I hear. Material shortages, labor costs, all of these different things. And maybe it might force us down a route of me having to do it more and more hands-on. I don't know.
The jury's out at the moment. Some more investigation needed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nick and Dawn, for talking to us about your project. It's really helpful to get the inside track of what it's really like taking on such a challenging role in a renovation. And if you want to see pictures of Nick and Dawn's renovation, including photos of their joyful courtyard, head to our website at homenotes.co/stories from sites. Okay, that's all for today's episode. Have an amazing week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode. Renovating can be a roller coaster, and if you're at the beginning of your renovation journey, come and find out about our Getting Started course at homenotes.co to make sure you get the best value from your project. Finally, if you've enjoyed this episode, then please do follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, as it will help us reach as many people as possible and all learn from these amazing experiences.